Okay, so like last time we had looked at two different kingdoms, that was kingdom Monera and kingdom Protista. So the major difference that we when we differentiate these different kingdoms is we go from a simpler structure to the complex structure. So in terms of kingdom Monera, it was prokaryotic and unicellular. In kingdom Protista, it was eukaryotic and unicellular. So now we are moving to multicellular organisms. So that is first example. Or
Complexity increases.
yes. So the first kingdom is kingdom fungi. So this is multicellular. Now all the above one. So except kingdom Monera, all the others they are eukaryotic. That is one thing you should remember. And except kingdom Monera and Protista, all others are eukaryotic. So two things you need to remember how the complexity increases. Again, I will repeat, kingdom Monera, it is prokaryotic and unicellular. Protista, it is unicellular and eukaryotic. And fungi, multicellular eukaryotic. And another interesting character of this kingdom fungi is, of course, they are most of these fungi, they are saprophytic. Now, does anyone remember what was saprophytes?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead and say it.
yeah. So, parasitic is parasites is like a behavior where an animal or a species feeds on another species. But in saprophytic, it means that when a species is dead or a living thing is dead, the species, the saprophytic species, feed on the dead decays of it.
Yeah, correct. No?
They basically survive on the dead decays of other animal tissues or plant tissues.
Right. So we had seen autotrophic had two types, photosynthetic and chemosynthetic, either with light energy or with chemical energy. Heterotrophic, they were of different types. One of them being parasitic, that means they are dependent on other living organism for nutrition. And the second type of heterotrophic organism is saprophytic. That means they are dependent for nutrition on the dead organism. Dead, or we call it decaying. That means they are degrading over the time. So on these kind of dead or decaying organism, these fungi, they survive or they obtain their nutrition from those cells. Now, everyone is very much familiar with the bread mold. I'm sure you have kept bread for 1 or 2 days, especially being in the dorms, hiding somewhere, and then it gets fungus, of course,
Yeah.
right? So that particular part is bread mold, or you can simply call it bread fungi, right? So it has a typical structure. So it is like a small branches like structure. It grows out of the bread, and within the bread it starts developing a connection, which we call as hyphae. So the most fungi, they are made up of thread like hyphae rather than cells. And hyphae, these are nothing but a tubular structure which has cytoplasm. So that whole hyphae or whole tubular structure is a single cell like structure which has many nuclei, and it has continuous cytoplasm in it. So if you look at this particular thread like structure, that's a tube like structure connecting between this fungal to this fungal individual. And within this, of course, like because it is a cell, it will have cytoplasm, it will have certain eukaryotic cell organelles, and it will have multiple nucleus. If you remember, I had given a reason why an elongated cell usually have 2 or more nuclei. Does anyone remember, especially in the tissues that we were looking at?
Yeah, sir. Because one nuclei alone cannot handle such a huge and long cell. So then the tasks are distributed between the two nuclei.
Correct. So that is the simplest reason. So any elongated cell or larger tube-like cells usually have more than one cell. So same is the case here as well in terms of hyphae structure. Common examples of this kingdom of fungi is the braid mold that you know, toadstool and mushroom. These are again commonly found examples around us. Mushroom is the most common one that you see even say, especially in Sahyadri campus. Toadstool is little not like it's not so common. The reason being it can be poisonous. Most of these species can be poisonous from this category. So that's when you don't find them so commonly around us. Yeast, again, most of you would know because if you bake something, you add yeast. So this is how it looks like. It's something like capsule-like body, and whatever this small bird-like thing you see, it is called as yeast bird, which is like a new organism growing on the main body of the yeast. Yeast is the only exception from the fungi category, which is unicellular. So like if you consider whole of it, it becomes multicellular, but this one individual unit is one yeast, and that is when it is the only exception to this fungi category being unicellular. But again, like most of these, they do not live in isolation, they always live in cluster. So that's when it can still be considered as whole of the multicellular family. Then this is called penicillium, like you see. Again, this is like a agar plate. Agar is one of the chemical which is used for growth of bacteria and fungi and so on. So if you keep something like this exposed to the air, the fungi from the air can grow and it can form colonies like this. And if you take a very tiny piece of this is how it would look like. So this is the example of Penicillium chrysogenum. Again, I assume most of you would have heard of this antibiotic called penicillin that is actually obtained from these fungal species. So there are different fungal species of the penicillium, and one of them being Penicillium chrysogenum. So I guess when penicillin was invented, I forgot the name of the guy, uh, Alexander Fleming. Yeah, I guess so. So he found that all over the growth of the bacteria, there were some fungal species next to the bacterial colonies, and next to the fungal species or fungal colony, the bacteria, they were not able to grow. So he isolated that chemical from that neighboring area next to the fungal species, and then it was identified later as penicillin. That's where the antibiotic activity of the penicillin was identified. That was an example of serendipity, like sudden invention or discovery. So these are various examples of this kingdom fungi. Very distinctive characteristic of the fungi is the presence of chitin molecule. Some people even call it chitin. I prefer to call it chitin in the cell wall. Now, in case of prokaryote, eukaryote, or plant cell and animal cell, we know kind of differences between what is present in cell wall and what is not present in cell wall. Mostly it is protein, polysaccharides, or
Lipid
lipopolysaccharide,
lipid biology.
lipid bilayer, and so on. So there are different chemicals. So the cell wall of this fungal cell, it specifically contains this chitin molecule, which is again a type of polysaccharide, but it has certain amine groups. So I will show you that particular example. Chitin structure. So if you look at this diagram, yeah, this is the structure. So you can see there is a kind of hexose sugar-like molecule, like a glucose or fructose, and then there is this amide group. Again, we need not go into the structural details, but I just wanted to show you how does it look like. So these are the examples of chitin molecule. And again, this is one unit. When many such units they are put together, what we call as polymer, that is what will make this chitin or chitin molecule. Where is it? Yeah. So these are the brief outline of the kingdom fungi. We will look into the details of these characteristics a little more in the next slide. But as of now, does anyone has any question? Good morning. Yes, Prakriti.
Sir, I didn't get what hyphae is exactly. It says hyphae rather than cells. So does it not have cells?
It itself is a cell.
So why? Okay, so it's a type of cell.
Type of cell? Yeah, you can say that. Okay, so we will go over this description to some extent. So fungi, these are filamentous. Filamentous means they are filament-like structure or a thread-like structure, right? Most of the fungi, they are thread-like or knob-like structure at the end of the thread. So that's why they are called filamentous. Again, excluding yeast, which is a single-celled fungi. This we already discussed. Now, their figure comprises slender, which is thin or sleek, long thread-like construction, and that's what we call hyphae. So again, to remind you this part, it's a single tubular cell, multinucleated, and cytoplasm is present throughout, and of course the cell organelles. And now when there is a web of hyphae structure, that means there are too many number of hyphae, and of course the fungi is spread over quite some area. That whole structural network of hyphae is called as mycelium. Again, the another name of fungi is mycota, Mycota. So this is also called kingdom mycota. Earlier it was called, now we only call it kingdom fungi. So this mycota, that's why that myc is coming from that in the mycelium word. So network of hyphae is called as mycelium. So fungi will have hyphae. When there are many hyphae, they are called as mycelium. Now, if the hyphae they are unbroken, that means if they are intact, multinucleated, closely associated, they are called as sinusoidal hyphae. That's just a type of hyphae, how they are structurally present. And if the hyphae has cross walls as in a partition or a septate, right? That's what is called a septate hyphae. Just two types. If it is unbroken, so like again, if you go and see this diagram, this is like one elongated tube, right? There is no partition in between. That's a sinusoidal hyphae. But let's say there is a partition at 2 or 3 places, or even at one place, that is acting like a partition between two cells, and then it is called as septate hyphae. Or when there are differentiated cells within the hyphae, that is a septate hyphae. So that's what are these two types of hyphae structure present in the fungi. This we already discussed, the chitin molecule, which is a polysaccharide present in the cell wall of the fungus molecule. Most of the fungi are saprophytic and are heterotrophic. Again, this also we discussed. Now, this is one of the important outlier, I would say. Some of the fungi, they also survive as symbionts. Okay, again, does anyone know what is symbionts? No. Yes,
The only
Nilamfar.
Sir, I've heard of the term symbiosis. Is it related to that, like the two animals which are in that?
Yeah, it was there in Venom.
Yeah.
Yeah, a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
yeah, symbiotic relation.
What is it?
So they both depend on each other to live? Is it that kind of a thing?
Yes, but what is the speciality of that relation?
They can't live without each other.
Yeah, too much of love.
So they both benefit. So they would benefit from each other.
So mutually beneficial.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
use that
exactly.
now very well. So it's mutually beneficial type of nutrition, providing nutrition to each other, right? So it's like both in win-win situation. In parasites, what happens is parasites, they are totally dependent on the other organism without giving anything in return. But in symbiosis, both the organism, they receive a kind of equal nutrition from each other. Like for example, in our what we say abdomen or the stomach, not stomach, intestinal cavity, there are these bacteria which take or which feed on the nutrition that we eat, and then they in return gives us vitamins, right? So that's like symbiotic association. That bacteria is also happy, we are also happy. So that is symbiosis, right? Some of the fungi, they are surviving as the symbionts, or they live in symbiosis with other species. Some are parasites, some are saprophytic. So there are different types of fungi based on the nutrition. Now, some of the symbiotic fungi, they live in association with algae called as lichens. So lichen is a special category which is combination of fungi with algae. Again, this is very commonly, I'm sure you would have seen this at quite many places. Lichen, right? Especially this one, right? On the trees or on the rocks, you see this growth,
Yeah.
right? That is very commonly seen around. So that is nothing but a lichen, which is a combination of fungi and algae, right? Algae is something like a photosynthetic eukaryotic organisms which are multicellular. So that we will see in the next kingdom. But that is lichen. Again, another example of lichen I must give you is what is that? Stone flower. It's in Marathi or Hindi, it is called as dagad phool, right? This is used in spices. This one, right? Like the garam masala that we have, it has this black stone flower, which we call, which is an example of the lichens, right? Because it is a mixture of, again, algae and fungus. So that's how it looks like. Yeah. Yes. Some of the symbiont fungi, they also live in association with the roots of higher plants, specifically of the higher plants, because they already have quite a lot of nutrition. Plants, or like small plants, or what we call as bushes, they may not have enough nutrition for themselves to let it go for the fungi growing on them. And these type of fungi which are growing in symbiosis with higher plants, especially on their root structure, they are called as mycorrhiza. Yeah. So two things here, the algae with fungus is called as lichen, and the fungus with the higher plant roots, they are called as mycorrhiza. Okay, now any question? You need to write notes. That's when you will not sleep. Yeah, you're just meditating probably in between. Any question, anyone? I hope this part is clear.
Yes.
Okay, so that's all, I suppose, with the kingdom fungi. Yeah, and then there is a small video for a minute. You can watch it on your own as a quick revision. I will show it to you later. Fine, bye.
I just remembered.
Okay, now, yeah, that's cheating.
You played the video.
Last time you said that we not showed to us.
After the class, you tell me, I will show it to
After
you.
the class, we'll share it.
5 minutes, it's 1 minute video.
Why don't you guys ask him on the dog? You need your dog and
You believe in the dog?
This is getting recorded.
Sir, actually that is 3.5 minutes.
3.5 minutes? No.
Go look
So
at
you
it.
could just show it now instead of this.
Ari, ha.
No, it's
Ha ha ha
3.5
ha
minutes.
ha ha.
Smashish, punch on your nose.
Yeah, sir.
Punch on your nose.
Wait, no.
Okay, no, we'll actually see it's the same points that we have discussed. It's for revision. I will show it to you later. You're so nice. Thank you. Okay, so the next kingdom after fungi is kingdom Plantae. Now again, going from Monera to Protista to fungi to Plantae, these are multicellular eukaryotic and autotrophic. Fungi, they were multicellular eukaryotic but saprophyte, most of them saprophyte, or you can say heterotrophic. These ones, kingdom Plantae, these are autotrophic. And they include these 5 distinct categories of the sub-classification of the Plantae, again, which we'll see one by one, all of them. That is Thallophyta. If you remember, some time back, we were talking of thallus organization. That is the separation of the root, stem, and leaves into not segregated structures. That is thallus, and that Thallophyta is algae. Bryophytes, mosses. Again, I am assuming that you would know of mosses around you. Pteridophytes, fern type of plant. Again, this would you would know. Gymnosperms. This we had discussed while we are looking at the flowering plants, because these are non-flowering plants, and the angiosperms, which are flowering plant. But one by one, obviously, we'll see all of these in the later part of the slides. So kingdom Plantae is filled with all the eukaryotes which have chloroplasts. So that means they are autotrophic in nature. Most of them, they make their own food, and but there are few which are heterotrophic as well, because those insectivorous plants, these kind of plants, they become heterotrophic because they are dependent for nutrition on the other organisms. So there are exceptions always, but most of the plants, they are autotrophic. Again, the general characteristic of the plant cells you would know of, that has cell wall, it has cellulose and blah blah blah, that you know. I'm not going to repeat that. Plant in general is divided into 2 phases of their life cycle. There are little complicated names here, but you can ignore them, and what you can simply remember is like what we had seen in the flowering plants. Like fertilization, the gamete formation happens. After gamete formation, fertilization happens. After fertilization, it becomes a zygote and it grows into a new plant. And then again, the cycle repeats. That's what is diploid stage. That means a normal chromosome number stage, to haploid, that is half number of chromosome in the gametes. So these are the 2 stages: diploid saprophytic and haploid gametophytic phases. So these are the 2 main like phases of the life cycle of a plant. But even if you write it in common terminologies, like from gamete formation to fertilization to the zygote formation, and then again the cycle repeats after the growth of the plant. So these are the 2 phases of the life cycle of the plant. I assume this was okay as a basic information. Now few more additional factors or characteristics. We again know of chloroplast, chlorophyll, or plastids present in the plant as a photosynthetic pigment. This again, I'm skipping it. They are non-motile. Of course, you know, you would have learned this in class 3 or 4. They reproduce asexually by vegetative propagation, or they can also reproduce by sexually. Now, when we talk of asexual mode of reproduction, that means there is no gamete formation, right? The examples that I can give you here is like if you put a leaf of a plant and if it grows into a new plant, like that Brahma Kamal plant, or a rose stem, like you chop off a twig of the rose or a branch of the rose plant and you plant it in, put it in soil, it will regrow. That's vegetative propagation. There it does not need any gamete formation at all. On the contrary, sexual reproduction, it always needs gamete formation. So again, that flowering structure of anther and ovule, they fuse with each other and then they give rise to the seeds, and that seed generates a new plant. So that is sexual mode of reproduction. So in plant, both these type of reproduction can happen. Plant cell contains outer cell wall and large central vacuole. Again, the common characteristics of the plant cell that you can write here. The important point here, the last one, that is they have different organelles for anchorage, like organelles in the sense the organ itself or the parts of the plant itself. Like for anchoring a plant, you need root system so that it can hold on to the position, that is roots, reproduction, the flowers, support again the stem and roots, and for photosynthesis leaf. So they have different organelle for different functions, and that is what is being said here. Again, any question, anyone? So the plant kingdom is classified into different subgroups. What we had seen, these 5 groups: Thallophyta, Bryophyta, Pteridophyta, Gymnosperm, and Angiosperm. These 5 types, they are based on different parameters, and these parameters are mentioned here: plant body, vascular system, and seed formation. So whether they have intact or a well differentiated plant body, that means well differentiated root, well differentiated stem or leaves. If not, they are classified into different types. So for example, I gave you example of Thallophyta and Bryophyta. These 2 categories, they don't have distinct stem, root, or leaf like structure, right? Algae, you know how they look like. They are just like a very tiny, it looks like a leaf or stem. I don't know what to call them, but we call it thallus. That's why. So that is plant body, and so based on plant body, they can be classified based on the presence or absence of vascular system. Again, we know of xylem and phloem being the vascular system or the transport system of the plant. So based on that, whether they are present or not present, plants are again classified into separate categories. Seed formation, again, if the flowers are present or not present, and if the flowers are forming seeds, they are classified into different types. There are these 2 specific classes which are not really used these days, that is cryptogams and phanerogams. These are the 2 types. So cryptogams, these are non-flowering and not seed bearing plants. For example, this Thallophyta, Bryophyta, and Pteridophyta. These phanerograms, these are flowering as well as seed bearing plants, that is Gymnosperm and Angiosperm. So that is the 2 like 2 more classes or other different way of classifying the whole of the plant. Again, any question, or else we will move on to the this one is of 1 minute. Yeah. No. Hello, we'll see it later. You people are so nice. Hey, hello.
Hey, hello.
Go and fill it up.
Sir, gaon wale.
I need water. I will die here while taking class. Shahid Sachin Patil. No.
Sir, your name will be engraved on the India Gate.
It should be engraved on these people's head.
Gaon walas, like you like to say.
Okay. So the next, we'll just see Thallophyta and then we will stop. So Thallophyta, these are obviously, they will have all the characteristics of kingdom plant. Apart from that, what they will have in special, that is what we'll be seeing in brief. So these are again autotrophic. Most of the thallophyte category, these are aquatic. Aquatic as in they are present in the water bodies. So they lack well differentiated body structure. and the plant body is thallus-like. And like I had mentioned earlier also, when you cannot differentiate between leaf and a stem, that's what we call as thallus. So that's what the Thallophyta name. Thallophyta includes the plants which are primitive and simpler body structure. Primitive because we know that some of the prokaryotes, they had photosynthetic pigment, then they become eukaryotic, and then they become simpler structures like plants. So that's when the Thallophyta came into picture, and then it evolved into bigger plants and so on. So the plant body is thallus, that's the only structure present with them. They can be filamentous, that means a thread-like structure. They can be colonial, that means they will form colonies, can be branched or unbranched. So that's how the thallus can be organized into different, depending on different species. The common examples: green algae, red algae, brown algae. Let me show you these examples as well, because I'm sure again this you would have seen very well. Green algae, green apple flavor. This is something like green algae. Yeah, this one.
Ew. Ah,
Yeah.
what is that boy doing in there?
Well, I don't know. Look at this. So that's something like green algae. Yeah. Then there
Ew.
red algae as well. Red algae, yeah, that's so cool. Looks like cool.
Yeah, it looks like condensed blood vessels.
Yeah, so this is something like red algae, which you can commonly see in the water bodies, and then there is something called as brown algae.
That is more common, I think.
That's my bread and
Right, fish tank, brown algae, right? So this is how the brown algae looks like in general.
Yeah, I think that's more common, brown algae.
Yeah. These ones are very common.
Seaweed
Right?
or brown algae.
Yeah. Basically seaweed kind of thing.
Yeah, in a way, yes. Yeah. Another common example that you would know of this Thallophyta is Pyrogyra, right? So let me show you this. I'm sure you would have seen as well. You may not know the name though. Pyrogyra. So something like this. You would have seen this a very thread-like structure. It is surely present in the pond next to the library here.
Yeah.
And if you look at microscopically, this is how it looks like. It has this spiral helical structure, and that's why it is
Wow.
Spirogyra.
So was it named after the microscope?
I guess so.
Yeah. Maybe it was renamed.
Yeah, and like internally it has structure like this. But again, this is like we don't have to go into detail. We just have to know, remember 2 or 3 examples, and please don't do that. Yeah. So these are the different examples. So there are again other examples, but the names are too complex. You need not remember all of these names. You need to remember minimum 2 examples of each of these category. So green algae, red algae, brown algae, and Spirogyra, these are good enough to remember. Yeah. So I guess we should take a pause here. If you want to continue, I can continue, but it's up to you.
Recording is stopped.
Let's just stop here.
Huh.
Cut.